you cannot escape from a prison if you were unaware that you were in one. You cannot escape from a prison if you do not know that you were in one. How many of you guys know who that came from? A bunch of you should.
Gurdjieff.
Well, there may be, I pulled it from Bob Proctor, so it may have come from someone else. But this particular one, that's where I pulled it from. You're not going to be able to release yourself from a prison if you're unaware that you're in one. And I say that because I've had a couple of conversations recently with people that just didn't recognize that they had placed themselves within a prison of doubt, of frustration, of limitations, and not simply the prison of whether or not you are worthy of something or whether or not you deserve something, but a number of others. And if you're unaware of the position you're in, if you're unaware of how you're living life, then trying to break free and trying to better yourself becomes a difficult journey for anybody. As we're diving into this world of affirmations and we look at personal development and we look at self-help, I always find it interesting because those of you that are here with me daily, or those that are finding maybe for the first or second time, but you're taking time out of your day to work on personal development, often you may have just recognized that you're in that prison. You may have just recognized that there's actually a cage there and you're trying to break through. You're trying to find the key to that lock. The people that most times need it the most aren't the ones that are here. And so I know oftentimes I speak into the choir when I go over some of these elements, but if we can help in any way, give you the picks to get through that lock, or give you the strength to bend those bars and step out into the freedom that you so much deserve, then that's why we do this. So one of the things, if we're going to look at the prison that we're in, if we're going to look at the value of things like affirmations and things like personal development, one of the most important things that you need in this journey, whether it be as an entrepreneur or just living life here on this earth, is exactly what Carolyn just wrote. Know thyself. It's a level of self-awareness, understanding who you are and what you need to do. Yeah, Michino saying for businesses to grow, 95% mindset, 5% strategy. And I will have people argue that all day long. And maybe the numbers may be skewed a little bit here and there, but I promise you that the mindset and the emotion behind it and that side of the planning and the education and the willingness to overcome obstacles is a much larger part of building any successful business than you can imagine, because all of the other elements I can use software to do. I can outsource. I can get someone that's happy being paid as if it was they're an employee being paid for some project where you're the one that's putting it all together. And so the mindset becomes a part of that. Now, if we're going to look at what we need to do to build out a successful business and have that right mindset, if we're going to look at what we need to do is, to know ourselves, then we need to raise our level of self-awareness. Now, self-awareness falls under this category of emotional intelligence. If you want to dive into, there's another video that I've done about IQ and EQ, right? The difference between intellectual quotient and the emotional intelligence that we have. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of those elements. So just the emotional intelligence side here, guys. Okay, we've got 4 big elements within emotional intelligence. I'm pulling some of this from Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I'll show you the book here in a second. But we have self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So I'm not diving into the self-management today. We're not diving into, what's needed for self-control and being trustworthy and conscientious around others and adapting to what other people are doing. We're talking simply about self-awareness and self-confidence, right? Mostly that emotional awareness that falls within that. So a great quote from Eckhart Tolle: rather than being your thoughts and emotions, be the awareness behind them. Quit being a slave and reacting to what's going on around you, reacting to what the world gives you, and start making the conscious decisions on your own to take those steps, to control your life, to do and be who you need to be. So, self-awareness, by definition, it's your ability to accurately perceive your emotions in the moment and understand your tendencies across the situation. It's a keen understanding of your tendencies, right? And it helps you quickly make sense of the emotions that you feel. It requires a willingness to tolerate the discomfort and feelings that may be negative. Now, emotions, I think I've got right here. There's three parts to an emotion. There's a subjective, a physiological, and an expressive. So here's what happens. Let's imagine, and there's been a number of different studies with this. So there's different elements of an emotion. So we need to think about those emotions, how we feel them, why we feel them, what happens. And then we need to begin to recognize those. And I'll get into why things like affirmations and personal development is important as a whole when you get into this. But when you have emotions, we have these different things that kind of occur, right? So the first one is a subjective component. This is the situation that you're in when you experience it. Then we have the physiological component. So there is an arousal of a feeling, not necessarily arousal, but there is a feeling that arises because of a physiological action based on the situation and what's going on. And then we connect that to an emotion. Okay, is everybody following me? So imagine you are in a dark parking lot at night. You're walking to your car. It's dark. You walk up and you see someone come out of kind of between cars and they start, a man is there and he looks kind of disheveled and he starts walking towards you. There's going to be a physiological reaction. Maybe your heart starts to pound a little faster. Heart rate increases. Maybe there's a little bit of sweat. There's some nervousness, right? We start to feel something and then we associate it with fear, anxiety, right? Something along those lines. But it's how we associate, it's the situation and then what emotion that we associate with the physical reaction, because physically our body reacts oftentimes in really similar ways to different emotions. Does that make sense, right? I'm in a situation where I'm with my love and there's that moment where she comes out and how she's dressed and she comes up and she wraps her arms around me and we begin a kiss. My heart starts to raise. There's the little butterflies, right? There's a little feeling of anxiety. Maybe I get a little sweaty, whatever. Similar physical reaction to the fear, but it's a different emotion that's connected. Are we understanding this? So understanding how our body reacts based on a situation and then what emotion we're going to attach to it, understanding that process, paying attention to it on a regular basis is important to begin to raise your level of self-awareness. And if you want to understand yourself better, that becomes important. Okay? Emotions are things that a lot of us avoid. Those emotions that we don't want to deal with, we don't want to confront, but understanding why certain things come about is important for us to raise our level of self-awareness. Okay? Emotions always serve a purpose. And oftentimes it's to help us understand what it is that we're dealing with. So a couple of components of self-awareness. One thing is quit treating feelings as good or bad. Emotions and feelings are oftentimes instinctual. They happen because they happen. It's not that a feeling is bad or good. Inherently, it is simply what is going on at that moment. And so what you're assessing instead is the why behind it and what can be done to modify it, right? Instead of beating yourself up about an emotion, oh, it's bad that I felt that in that situation. Well, why? Why did you feel it? Well, I felt it because of this. Well, why did you feel it because of that? Well, because I felt it when I was young. Well, why did you feel it because you were younger? Or why did you feel it because of something that happened a year ago? Or why are you bringing that in based on something that happened before? And get deeper than the initial question. That's where things become a bit more difficult. That's what a lot of times we struggle with, is because we're unwilling to get down into those deep, dark secrets and what makes you tick. We don't want to peel back the layers of the onion because, damn, I get further in and I'm just going to start crying, right? We don't want to deal with that. We don't want to deal with that pain, that frustration. Why aren't you taking action now? Why are you putting something off? I had, someone that recently said, well, they wanted to come back for the second meeting in 2 weeks because of a work emergency. And we stopped for a second. We started talking, and it had nothing to do with that. They just got scared of making a decision, because making a decision meant, like, it started to remind them of decisions they'd made in the past that hadn't gone right. And so that fear and that anxiety kicked up real quick. How many of you guys got done with some type of, whether it be a coaching or a decision that you made, and within 24 hours, some kind of emotion kicked in and you started remembering some decision that you had made in the past, and you got scared, and just like Carolyn's saying, you put some meaning to it that has nothing to do with the current situation, everything to do with something that happened before, and you decide not to take action because of that. And instead of dealing with that whole cause and effect, that series of events, and why that came about and why you acted in a certain way, and analyzing and saying, no, I'm going to choose to do this, we just roll with that decision because we were scared of something that may have happened in the past. Guys, it's not just work. It's not just this business. If we were honest with ourselves, we'd say that we've done that to loved ones many times, where we treat them a certain way based off of a relationship that we had before. They say something offhandedly and you immediately react because it reminds you of a situation. And instead of assessing that, we fluff it off and say, oh, sorry, don't worry about that. Or we ignore it completely and allow the argument to just grow. Don't do that. The emotions are there for a reason. Be willing sometimes to dig a little bit deeper. Okay. And this goes to this next thing. Observe the ripple effect. Your emotions are going to cause a series of events, and you've got to look at that. You've got to be willing occasionally to lean into that discomfort. Feel your emotions physically. Feel it. Feel what's going on, because it allows you to recognize then the triggers as you start to feel them. Hey, I'm starting to feel a little anxious. I wonder what's going on. Know who or what pushes your buttons. Sometimes you may want to avoid those situations. Sometimes it's simply you're not paying attention to how you react. Pay attention to it. Watch yourself like a hawk. Keep an emotions journal. So I mentioned this too, and I'm not sure if he's on the call today, but someone earlier were talking about being able to sleep, and sometimes your thoughts are just won't stop. Whether it's this business, emotions, work, et cetera, something's going on and your brain won't quit, or you wake up a couple times during the night and you're just immediately clear on what's going on in your head, or you're waking up early in the morning, or you're spending your day doing all of these things, right? Yeah, Ao, you are on. Okay. I didn't want to call you out. Forrest saying, because that emotional roller coaster, we often end up in that valley of despair. We do. Now, a lot of times we allow our thoughts to just kind of run wild. And so within Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, a lot of other places, they talk about writing things out, journaling, writing out your emotions, writing out not just what you're feeling, but what was going on at that time without judgment. Though this is one of the hardest parts, is to write out what you're feeling and what you're experiencing and what's going on without judging yourself and without trying to edit, right? So I've talked about this before, but trying to do a brain dump, this is different than writing out your goals. This is different than writing out your dreams. Sometimes you just need to write and allow it to go because you bottled it up too much. Okay. It's interesting. I think in the last kind of 20, 30, 40 years, we've had this connection to 23andMe and Ancestry.com and all of these amazing things that get into our ancestors, right? And we start to look at genealogy. And then you find these connections to the past and these people, and we're looking to create these stories around them. And that's amazing. But what comes up oftentimes during that is you end up finding journals. And the way some people have written journals throughout, the 20th century, the 19th century, even beyond. And you read these journals and you can tell they're writing to their posterity. They're writing in a way that they expect other people to read this. And sometimes you guys are trying to do the same thing, and you're trying to edit who you are and what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what's going on. And you're trying to portray yourself in either a very, very positive light, or you're unwilling to put yourself in the positive light and it's all negative. And you've got to be a way to you've got to allow yourself to simply write. Just write, just get it out. If you want to write your pretty journal in one journal, put that in the nice hardbound or that leather bound one, and then grab the other one and just dump a big pile of brain nonsense all over it. Okay. Allow yourself to mentally vomit once in a while. Okay. And I promise it can be effective. But once in a while, going back and looking at that will allow you to kind of see how things are flowing and what's going on. Again, one of the hardest parts about raising your level of self-awareness is doing it in a way where you are not bringing a tremendous amount of judgment upon yourself. We are, after all, our own worst critics, our own harshest critics. We do that so much. You have to be willing to just assess, to pull back. As Eckhart Tolle was saying there, right? And that's why I brought this quote on there. I added it today, is because instead of just being the thoughts and emotions, you've got to be the awareness behind them. You've got to be able to detach occasionally. So don't be fooled just by the mood that you're in. This goes to some of what we were talking about. A mood isn't just set with what's happening or what's being said or what you experience right now. Oftentimes that mood is set over the last 72 hours. So don't think that it's just right now and this is why I'm upset. You got to be able to look at everything, stop and ask yourself why you do things, and then revisit your values on a consistent basis. So a couple of quick things: mindfulness and meditation. You want to raise your level of self-awareness, become mindful and work on meditation. So affirmations absolutely play a role with that. Breathing and breathing exercise play a role with that. The purpose of that is to allow your brain to work, right, without getting wrapped up in it. Just do the affirmation, spend another 2 minutes breathing through it, and just let your mind go for a little bit. Movement is important with self-awareness because becoming aware of your body should be part of what's going on. Seeing how your body is reacting physiologically to whatever emotions you may be feeling. Your mind and body are one entire being, guys. You can't separate the two. Not the way we often want to. So reflection and journaling, there you go. Asking for feedback from people you trust or loved ones. This is also not easy because we're worried a lot of times about what our friends or loved ones may say. And then finally, work with a coach. Raising your level of self-awareness will do some tremendous things for your personal development, for your progress as an individual. I promise you, it will help you with your business. Some of these days that you're stuck on things, if you become a little more aware of it, of why you allow yourself to be stuck or get worked up over some little obstacle, right? I would say if I were to pull and if I were to assess, forget a poll. If I were to assess 1,000 of the partner program members or 1,000 people that I've worked with over the years that have tried to start businesses online, I would say the largest deterrent from success, if I were to kind of rank a few off the top of my head without getting 1 through 5, number 1 would be mindset. The inability to grasp that they're capable of actually doing it long term. Excitement is one thing. Anybody can get excited for a short period of time. Anyone can get excited over a few days, but going past that, that's where people struggle. Keeping themselves going. Another thing is a lack of self-awareness. Now, there's different levels to this. One of it would be allowing yourself to get tripped up. If I were to do a scale of 1 to 10 and what's really important to be successful, people get tripped up on things that are like the 7, 8, 9, and 10 on that scale, like the lowest things. Like that's it. They get frustrated on things. I've talked with somebody not long ago, and if you're on this call, I'm not trying to call you out, but there was getting a domain attached to, whether it's ClickFunnels or this or that, or a Bitly link or whatever. Guys, that's something that can be solved in minutes, or I call somebody, or I Google the answer, or I find it on YouTube. Odds are the solution is like right within my grasp, but I get frustrated because I either don't have it right away, or I'm so used to knowing all the answers because I've been doing something else for this long. And now I'm here and this is frustrating me, and it's just not meant to be. But guys, that frustration doesn't come from a little link that you didn't get to. The frustration was there from something else. Right? And you didn't deal with the something else. And you probably haven't dealt with it a dozen times in the last 5 years, and it's stunted your growth in a number of other factors as well. It's the reason you haven't lost the last 5 pounds, because whatever. It's the same reason your business hasn't gone. It's the reason that there's still a little tension between you and your significant other. It's some BS that's hiding around that you just haven't dealt with. And I share these things constantly because I can absolutely raise my hand and I can point out a number of those things where I procrastinate, I avoid conflict, I don't deal with this. Here's a problem I should have dealt with 6 months ago. We all have them. Raise your level of self-awareness. Do it through these simple things and become better. And rise up, rise from the ashes, fly like the phoenixes that you are. Tomorrow we'll get into some marketing. I'll send out a text email. Hopefully you guys take advantage of the affirmations group. I hope to see all of you guys.